G'day, you well? There's drinks after this. So, hang on, you can wait, it's okay. Fantastic to be here. I'm here wearing two hats. I'm here, as many of you will know, the Chief Executive of Business New Zealand, at least for the next few months. But I'm also a Tertiary Education Commissioner. So my title inside the TEC is I am Commissioner O'Reilly, which in my view makes me sound like a New York policeman. Commissioner O'Reilly, there's been a murder in the Bronx. See how that plays. Anyway, so I'm not that comfortable with that title, but I do get called it occasionally in the board minutes and stuff, so we'll sort that out later on. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a big commitment for everybody to be in the room for a couple of days talking about this. So, I'm surprised and delighted that this number of people would be making this kind of commitment to this issue. Workplace literacy and numeracy is a huge issue. It's been a huge issue in New Zealand for years and years and years. As you know, many of you will know better than me, it's something we share with other countries a little bit. Countries of the old Commonwealth seem to have this problem a bit, and others don't necessarily have the same problems as us, but it's certainly an issue in New Zealand. And in the past, maybe we shouldn't have ever thought like this, but maybe in the past we could have said, oh look, something we can live with, Well, you can't now. The nature of the world is such that jobs that people that do not have literacy and numeracy skills and increasingly ICT skills simply won't be employable in quite that sense, looking out to the future, because the world is basically, the nature of globalization, the nature of the global marketplace, the nature of competition is such that if you don't have literacy and numeracy skills, and in fact, if you don't have quite high quality literacy and numeracy skills over a period of time, you're really going to struggle to get any job at all, and that's a terrible outcome for New Zealanders. Whenever I talk to business people about this, I used to talk to business people about this, I still do, but when I did in the past, a lot of them would blame the school system, which is kind of pointless in a sense. I mean, sure, we should hold the school system to account, and the teachers, if there's any of you in the room, of course you will feel as though you should be held to account to make sure that kids leave school with functional literacy and numeracy. But one of the points I make back to business to try and keep them engaged in this is, and it's something that those of us all in this room, I guess, who have adequate literacy and numeracy skills find hard to understand, that actually you might have marginally okay literacy and numeracy skills leaving school, and they might actually go away. They might actually get worse as you leave school because you don't use them. And that's a really helpful piece of knowledge to know when you're in the business community, because it means that literacy and numeracy becomes a much more complex issue for people to grapple with than simply saying, I'll blame the schools, and we just need to make sure the schools get better and we'll solve it. Actually, it's a much more complex issue than that. It's got to do with where you came from, it's got to do with your migration status, as I said, it's got to do with how well you went in school, and yes, some school issues, and it's also got to do with degradation of those skills later on. So I think it's useful for you to understand that business is interested in a complex conversation about this. Next point I make is that literacy and numeracy is not just a workplace skill. All of the businesses that I know who carry out literacy and numeracy training are very clear that yes, it's valuable in the workplace, it's valuable right from the compliance level, reading the health and safety notices, right through to the productivity and customer service level and the competitiveness level. But it's also a community good. The fact that someone can read and write means they're likely to be a better dad and a mum, means they're likely to be more engaged in their community, means more likely that they'll get engaged in community activities or the church or whatever it is that they want to be engaged in. So companies are very clear about this, and one of the things they want to talk about often when they talk to me is that very issue. How can we make sure that everybody understands that? Because yes, it's a business good, but also it's a community good. Workplace literacy and numeracy are dovetailed into and are a key part of all of those other things that you hear from the business community about how important they are for our future. Things like workplace productivity and innovation, business improvement, improving health and safety outcomes, all of those things. Without literacy and numeracy, you really can't do them very well. So these things are tools. Literacy and numeracy, ICT skills, they're tools. They're very, very important tools. They're foundational tools to community success and to business success, but that's all they are. They're tools. In other words, the companies that you're going to hear from will be thinking of them as ways of achieving an outcome. If I can get better functional literacy and numeracy in my team, that means my company will be more competitive. That means we'll have a more successful community and a more successful customer base to work with. So they're not the final destination, they are a big part of the journey. They are a big foundational part of the journey. They contribute to more productive workplaces and so on. So without further ado, what I want to do is introduce you to our 4 panellists. They come from 2 of my hero New Zealand companies in this space, Downer and New Zealand Post, both companies that have fantastic histories in thinking not just about literacy and numeracy, but about employee capability, blurring the line between what works for the business and what works for local communities. And so they've always been hero companies of mine in that regard, and I'm very, very pleased they've turned up today. What we're going to do is, let me first introduce to you Debbie Kirby, who's the Senior HR Business Partner for the Central Region of Downer, and Fred Craigie, the Supervisor Open Space Management, Auckland for Downer. Can you please thank Deb very much? And then let me introduce you to Andre Colbert, who's the Northern Region Learning and Development Specialist at NZ Post, and Nelson French, who's the Warehouse Manager at New Zealand Post. If you can welcome them. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask, in the case of Downer, we're going to ask Debbie and Fred over them to get up to the podium for a few minutes and tell us a little bit about the Downer story, the history, what drives them and so on, some of the lessons they've learned. And then we'll do the same with Andre and Nelson in a few minutes' time. We won't take questions at that time. What we're then going to do is they'll sit back down at the table. I will ask them a few questions that are completely off the cuff and have not been put to them before this moment, and a few that might have been actually, and a few that may genuinely not have been given to them before this moment. So keep on your toes. And then what I'll do is I'll open it up to the floor for a few questions, and then we'll hopefully finish on time so that you can go and wet your whistle downstairs. So without further ado, can I ask Debbie to please take the podium. Debbie.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. It's always exciting to be talking about literacy and numeracy, and certainly about literacy and numeracy in Downer, because it's something that we're very passionate about, and that we've worked hard over a number of years to put some programs in place. So Downer is a large organisation. It's about 5,000 people, and we are made up with a large proportion of what would be classed as unskilled labour. So there's certainly some literacy and numeracy issues within there. So the drivers, I guess, we might have 3 main drivers when we're looking at why we would want to be putting such a focus on literacy and numeracy within our company. And probably the first one is just the basic workplace functions of the people that our employees. We need them to be able to understand for health and safety reasons. We need them to be able to understand to fill out timesheets and business processes. But even more than that, we want them to be able to think and work things out in a logical way around maths and that kind of thing that will make them more productive employees. So that's one of our drivers. The second one is that for any business, we need to be competitive, and in order to be competitive, we have to have well-trained employees with some kind of qualifications, and that certainly goes for Downer. So we put our employees through a range of training, and in order to be able to do that, there needs to be a component of literacy and numeracy unskilling, because a lot of our guys are starting from a really low level. So if we need to put them on a national certificate, then we need to, first thing we need to be doing is looking at literacy and numeracy levels to give them the best possible chance of success. So we've done a lot of work around that. I could talk for hours. I'm trying to fit this into a very short time. And the other thing, and it is a really big driver for us, is employee engagement and satisfaction. And so looking at somebody as a whole of life and how we can improve their quality of life, not just for them, but for their families, their whānau, their community, is a really big driver for our literacy and numeracy programs. And that's one where we have huge success, because sometimes the smallest, what might seem like a tiny bit of progress for us, is a huge progress for an individual and a family, and they take that back to their communities. I'm going to pass over to Fred in about 30 seconds, because he is our operational supervisor and has been working really hands-on, and he'll be able to give you a good snapshot of some of the things that we do in a practical fashion. But I just thought I'd tell you one little story, something that's had a huge success for Downer that we never expected to have such a success. We do put a lot of our employees through national certificates, and one of the initiatives that came out of that is that once some of these people got a level 2 national certificate, or potentially 2 level 2 national certificates and a level 3, we found that they had actually achieved their NCEA certificate by cross-crediting. And so what we did for many employees was we sent away to NZQA and got their certificates for them and gave them to them in a presentation. For some of our employees, that was just the hugest achievement and gave them such a sense of personal satisfaction. Then they went home to their families and to their children and said, if I can do it, you can do it too. So that was just wanted to share that because that was a real, we didn't know it was going to have that effect, and it was a great thing for Downer. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Fred Craigie. Fred does wonderful things in literacy and numeracy in Downer for us up in Auckland, and he'll tell you a little bit about that. Thanks.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Fred Craigie and I was introduced from Downer up in Auckland in open space management. That's all the parks and reserves. I've got a big responsibility of handling 1.4 million Jaffas in Auckland to keep them happy in their parks and reserves, but to do that we've got 190 staff that share that with me, excluding the 14 people above me. So I was dragged into this. Is Graham here? Graham? He's not. No. Okay. Graham's the man that's responsible for putting me here right now, as well as the company, because they put me through this, bugger me. 6 years later, I'm still doing it, and I needed to. That's what my senior management said. I need to apologise because occasionally I swear. So I apologise right now. 6 years ago, I entered into this along with a whole lot of other Downer employees, and we got put through this diploma. For ourselves in open space management in Auckland, we came from the ex-Manukau City Council, ex-XL, and then we were purchased nearly 7 years ago by Downer. So what happened was we came in with a really poor record, to be honest, because you know what most council workers are like, stand on that shovel, sweet ass. Well, yeah, that was a lot of us. And to this day, we still have a lot of those people. We have people that are still doing up to 50 years with us. In fact, they're dying with us, some of our people. But we also run 7 nationalities. A large contingent of ours at this point in time is really starting to get up. There's our PI people. Got a lot of Māori. We've got a lot of mixture of everything else. And amongst all of that, we have had some serious difficulties with our general paperwork. And Downer, coming into the Downer family, sure as hell showed us what paperwork was. So we had to do something about it. So here we were. We went through, we started a number of things that were put in place, and one of them that was built put in place for us is called our nuts and bolts. And our nuts and bolts, for those that come into the company, if you want to be a part of the Downer group, you'll go through this, and it's our LLN that we actually put in front of them and say, we want to know what you know. You may have the skills, and if you've got the skills and you haven't got the LLN with you, that's okay. That's what we're there for now. So that's what we do. And it's done nothing but good for us. I'll tell you how good it's been. We handled a qualification, a qualified GIS. We have a GIS system that's running, that Debbie was talking about, and we got a number of staff all up around the country where they actually got their School C certificate, is what I call it. Any rate, within our organisation, there were 72 of them that we put through in 18 months, and they got that qualification. And to do that, we used 27 different staff. Pick the best, pick the worst, pick whoever. And they were our guinea pigs. And at the same time, I was asked if I would take 2 guys at the same level as me, outside of our division, and teach them. So I was given the honour to tutor them through. And then they too are actually in the same boat as we are. So they share the same passion as what we've got. So the benefits were huge amongst ourselves, especially to get this. We had We've got such a better return on our productivity. We've got a better understanding of their daily job sheets. Not everything at our place in open space management is done in English. We had permission to do it in other languages, so we did, with the proviso that it still was in the parameters of our health and safety side of things. Our company allowed that to happen. But what happened was most of the boys, especially the Tongan boys, said, that's a bit tough. You know, the English for them was that much easier. So we said, no problem. You know, and those are the things that they brought into, as well as us going to their churches, using their children who are, were, what do you call Form 6, Form 7? Well, what's that now? Mark 8, those ones. We were using them. We were using anyone we possibly could to help improve their literacy and their numeracy side of things. We got huge buy-in. We've got a massive culture within the organisation that's been created because of things like this. And when you get people together that are in the same boat and they share the same thing, unbelievable. It really is. And we have benefited across the board. I wish I had time to show you a couple of videos, because one of them shows my divisional manager sitting down and speaking before us. And it just so much buy-in that it was unbelievable. And we got buy-in right from the top. And I think that's one of the reasons that we benefit as well, is because we've actually got that buy-in and they can see it. One last thing. There's a guy called Gummy. His real name's Eric Darlow. Some of you might have seen him on a video that we did for Pathways. Was it? Skills Pathways, was it? Which wasn't so long ago. It was brilliant. We had a great time. But here's one for you. This guy can't read, can't write, can swear really well, drinks really well. But he's still going through this 6 years later. We're still looking for places for him. In fact, I get back into Auckland, and we've got a new venture going on. So we'll be getting into that with him. 6 years ago, he had a young fella by the name of Vinny, and Vinny got to the age of 2.5, 3, and he swore black and blue he was going to read a book to Vinny before Vinny read a book to him. Before Vinny turned 3, he achieved it. He achieved it. If you had a look at what he does, how he writes, how he reads, the things he does just to understand things, you'd be blown away. But we've also learnt to customise our teachings for their learnings around our being job specific. So, I think at the end of the day, it would have been lovely to have him here actually, to have him say a few things himself, but yeah, it's really worked for us. So on behalf of myself and all those who are probably going to benefit, I thank you guys and that Graham, but he's not here, but thanks.
Three takeouts over that one. Qualifications. Hear the stuff about the qualification, getting a qualification. Often the first qualification you might have had. Imagine how inspirational it is for you and your family to get that. Second insight there is all on board, churches, family, whānau, everybody's on board to this thing. And third uptake I got was company performance and just how that buy-in really helps. So fantastic, and thanks very much to Downer. Now I'll ask Andre to come up for New Zealand Post. No hard yards there, mate. Nothing to follow. Come on up.
Kia ora everybody. I was going to do that Minister Joyce one and get that selfie, but that's already been done. But I did take some notes and put it on my phone, so if I look down, that's why. First and foremost, just want to say thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here today. I hope everyone knows New Zealand Post brand. It's been a brand that's been around for 170 years, And as you've probably seen on the TV and the radio and in the newspapers, we're going through a lot of change. The world is changing, and quite honestly, New Zealand Post needs to change as well. The shift to knowledge-based economy or knowledge-based industries means that we need to be fluid in how we work. A focus on customer service is going to be critical to the success of our business moving forward. You know, one of the challenges we've got is that quite literally people are sending less letters, and we all know that. Mail volumes are down by huge amounts. But what we are finding is that our other businesses within the group, our parcel business is just going through the roof. KiwiBank, more Kiwis are banking with KiwiBank than they have before, and that's really encouraging for us as an organisation. I've brought Nelson French along, who's one of our site managers from our contract logistics business, and he's probably the one you want to hear from the most, because at a on the floor level, he's really getting some really good successes out of our two programs. I'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. I want to thank the two organisations that we've been working with in these literacy and numeracy pilots. So recently let me just start by saying I've only been at New Zealand Post for 6 months. Started in January, and my boss, who's the learning and development manager for the group, said, "Hey, guess what? You're going to literacy and numeracy conference in Wellington, and I want you to talk about the programs you're running." So it's been really interesting to have pilots running at our businesses in a time of change, and we'll talk more about that as well. And I'll get Nelson when we answer the questions to go a bit more into that. But the two organisations I want to thank who have worked with us on these two pilots have been Literacy Aotearoa and Workbase. And when we went out to the market to look at organisations that we could work with, these two organisations put their hand up and said, "Look, we're really keen and willing to come in and help you look at developing a literacy and numeracy strategy for New Zealand Post and the New Zealand Post Group." So if you don't know, New Zealand Post Group is made up of a few companies. Mostly when you say New Zealand Post, you think of our posties out on the road every day. Well, from the 1st of July, every alternate day, you'll get your mail. Unless it's fast post, and you'll still get that every day. Priority mail is still delivered every day. Bit of a plug there for the product. But our posties are a really critical part of our business, but it's not our only part of our business. Our mail centres in Auckland and Highbrook, Manawatu and in Christchurch, are working really hard to process the mail. Our contract and logistics business, our Express Courier Limited that has Pace, Courier Post, and Courier Logistics at Nelson's at, KiwiBank and our store networks of New Zealand Post shops around the country. So one of the changes that we're going through as a group is bringing those businesses together more. My role as a learning and development specialist for the northern region means that I cross from Karaia all the way down to Taupo, but cross all of our businesses. So we're working across those key businesses within the group. That's challenging in that before that, only our mail and logistics centre or mail and logistics businesses had a dedicated learning and development team. And so what we're finding is that there's a real need across all of our businesses. We have a huge diversity in terms of our workforce. We've got a lot of people that have been with us for long term. I'm talking to people across our businesses that have been there, sometimes longer than I've been alive. 30, 40 years, some of our people. And that creates challenges of its own. But in the space of literacy and numeracy, what we've found is that, and again, the guys from Down are talking about buy-in from the very top. Brian Roach, our CEO, is very keen. He's driving this shift, getting literacy and numeracy in place, getting our programs up and running. What it's meant for us in learning and development within the organisation has been that we need to have a literacy and numeracy strategy, but it's also got to be linked to some other form of learning framework within an organisation that creates a learning pathway for our people internally. We feel very strongly that our people are going to be our competitive edge. Peter Singe, don't know if you've heard of him, he wrote The Fifth Discipline, talks about that the competitive edge is about organisations learning faster than their competition. So you've got to have a learning organisation. And for us, that starts at the literacy and numeracy level. It's key for us to develop our people with the skills they need, or the skills that they need to operate the changing world of technology. You know, in our mail processing centres, we've got machines that are operated now by computer. So gone are the days of the on-off button. Now it's spitting out, you know, facts and data, and our people are going to need to diagnose problems, have a talk to their teams, talk to their team leaders, and all those issues around communication and literacy and numeracy are going to be vital to upskilling and increasing capability in our workforce. I'm probably yapping on a bit, but yeah. Just want to say, before I head off and we answer questions, really big thank you to Work-Based and Literacy Aotearoa. We had 2 pilot programs within Post, and one's still going, one's just finished. We've drafted the first report from the first program that finished. One pilot was at our International Mail Centre, based out at the airport. The other is at Contract Logistics. The International Mail Centre pilot has just finished, so we've just got the draft report back from that. We've found some really interesting things, and that'll probably come out of the questions and answer time, so really keen to get those, share some of those insights with you. What else can I talk about? That's probably it at the moment. Fire those questions. Nelson will answer them. He's got to fly out at 5:30. He's got to get back to work, but I'll make sure I drink his beer down at the thing. But I'll be still here later. So yep, fire those questions, and we'll see what we can do. Cheers.
So once again, some great insights there. Pathways, the importance of not stopping just at literacy and numeracy. What does it all lead to once you've got that learning culture? That's a really useful insight. Buy-in from the top. I know that Cos Bruin and the guys at Down also get a lot of buy-in, a lot of support for this stuff. So, you know, so that's another really interesting point. And then the pilots, that's another useful thought for everyone in the room to understand. It's very unlikely a company's just going to say, hey, literacy and numeracy, let's do it. They'll tend to pilot, they'll tend to experiment, they'll tend to try something out, use a site, use a particular set of managers that might be helpful. So with that in mind, Nelson, do you want to just grab the microphone and just spend just 60 seconds or so just talking about the pilot, why you took the approach you did around the pilot, and what the success or failure of the pilot was? Can we get the techo down here to? Is it? Oh, is it?
Hello. There we go.
Oh, that's techno skill, and I'm useless at that. So,
great. Thank you. So we had a person from our learning and development team come into our company, Contract Logistics, to speak to the management team. And it was to see whether we would be interested to pilot a literacy and numeracy program within the workplace. No sooner had she said, Caroline, what she was there to say, I said yes. And thankfully, I was supported by my GM at the time, who's now moved on. But after Caroline had left, I said to the management team, what a great opportunity that in all the time that I'd been with the company, 18 years, this was the first time that an opportunity was presented to what I call as the floor workers. So the staff who work in the warehouse. Post invests and spends a lot of time in upskilling and developing their staff. If you're in sales, marketing, team leader roles, management roles, but in the company I was working with, Contract Logistics, there was very little opportunity and formal training to what was being offered on this pilot course. And it's been absolutely fantastic. Every year New Zealand Post participates in a JRA engagement survey, and we've had phenomenal results in the time that we've been piloting this program for the staff. I flicked an email to Caroline and said that within one of the teams there was a 13% improvement in regards to learning and development. That was one team alone, and there were several other teams that made up an overall result for the warehouse, and all teams had an increase in engagement. But it's the little things that I've seen, and I've got to say that initially, for the first few weeks, maybe the first couple of months, I didn't see a lot of change in the behaviour of the staff in the warehouse, and I became a little bit concerned. But shortly after that, I got the results for the JRA, which were fantastic. And then I started seeing little things that perhaps were already there, but I was missing. It was as if the staff were walking with a spring in their step, if that makes sense. So the training room that they went into was right next to my office area, and they never needed to be rounded up to be told that they needed to be in the classroom for their session. They were already there waiting for the tutor. They were prepared, they'd done whatever work they were required to do, they had their folders, they had their books. It was fantastic actually. It was, when I look at recall the expression on their faces now, I can see the joy, if that is such a word that I can use, of them going in to learn. And then when they came out, you could see that contentment. I mean, I could say a whole lot of other things, but it's been absolutely fantastic. And the good thing is, it's certainly been a win-win. So a win for the individuals themselves, but not only themselves. It's already been mentioned about families and communities, but NZQA standards as well. And of course, it's been a win-win for the company as well. So the JRA engagement results I've spoken about. And we're now getting individuals who didn't have the confidence to speak at team meetings, participating and engaging, and there is some of them who are actually leading these sessions now, toolbox meetings, team meetings, whereas in the past, and I've been there a few years, and I've known a lot of them for quite a number of years, they've never done it before. What I've also seen is a willingness to work as a team within the warehouse without being directed. So through this training, they form their little groups and they get to know each other more closer than they've ever known before. And as a result, when they go back into the workplace, so they become more than work colleagues. It's like mates in the true sense. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but perfect. I feel I've said enough.
That's perfect. And one point I'd just raise out of that, one other point very, very valuable for policymakers in the room, is the importance of objective data. So the employee engagement scores on that site through the JRA survey rose significantly. That's the sort of stuff that's absolutely vital for business managers and investors in the program to be able to see. So if they can see that objective data, they can see, you'll probably see accident rates coming down. You could probably tick off a whole bunch of data points, right? But the idea of having objective data, you go back to the bosses, you can go back to the supervisors, you can go back to everybody else and say, here is the payoff of what we're doing here. You can't measure the spring and the step, to your point, right? But you know something's going on. That's quite an important point for everybody to note. Don't be scared of focusing on objective data, because it'll be there and it'll be pretty positive. Well, on that subject, I wanted to come back to you, Fred, about the providers that you used. Nelson, I'm just foreshadowing, I'll come to you on this question too. When you used a provider inside Downer, what were you looking for? And what were some of the things you saw that were really good about the providers that you were using, and some of the things that you thought could have been improved? A number of providers in the room will be interested in hearing about how you chose a provider, what sorts of things you found were really good about them, what sort of things they could have improved upon. You use in-house? Sure, but please, yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
as Fred was just saying, that Fred didn't choose the providers, so and didn't
Fantastic.
have much to do with the providers because, to be fair, the programs that Fred ran, he was running them himself.
Okay, good.
So, but I could answer you in terms of other training. What we really looked for in providers is people that were right up there with literacy and numeracy in everything that they did. This has really permeated our company so that we don't do any training now that we haven't already spoken to a provider about what do they do for those that struggle with literacy and numeracy. And we look at the material before we even present it. We look at the assessments, and if it's not accessible to our employees, then we won't use that provider. We sometimes send the providers away to literacy and numeracy specialists to come back to rework their material or have a look at their facilitation methods and come back and talk to us. Is that enough of an answer?
Perfect. And the New Zealand Post guys, with that same question, either of you can answer the question. How do you, when you think about a provider, what's important for you?
There were a couple of things that we were looking for out of a provider when we went out to the market. One of the key ones was to be able to contextualise the learning in the workplace. So, one of the good things that both the providers did was said, let's go for a walk through the warehouse, let's understand what your guys are doing on a day-to-day basis so that we can put that learning in context. I think we talked about in one of the other sessions, understanding the health and safety policies, what do those look like? Every business has standard operating procedures, but how can we use those in the learning? So that was a key one. The other one was, and we just talked about it, being able to quantify that data or quantify the return on investment. Companies are looking for what's our return on investment out of these programs, but not just the return on investment for the company, but also what's the ROI for the people that are attending as well. So it's about them setting individual goals and them achieving those goals, as well as us being able to achieve business goals out of that as well. That's really important.
Yep, good point. Yeah, some good stuff there about you're not going to be literate by learning Shakespeare if you're working in a warehouse, right? So you're going to have to, that business language is a very important point. Perhaps if I could come back to you, Debbie, and also Andre, we just talked about this before you got on the podium. You're currently both investing significant sums of company money in these programs. And government, I hope, is investing alongside you in theory. Well, if they're not, they should be. What would it take from government in terms of their investment, in terms of the way in which they think about investing, to help you increase your investment? What would that take? What would that look like?
That's interesting. That's an interesting concept. I think it's understanding the context of our environment. And one of the things I just pick up when you spoke about measuring the success of programs, the first program, ours were measured on the people that went on the programs. They had the literacy assessment initially and then they had it again afterwards. But for us, that was such a small measure. In terms of the big picture, what happened with, Vinny reading a book to his son and the spring in the step and the productivity for the company, for us were way more important than that little box. And so if we were going to get involved with that sort of thing again, we want the measures to be really relevant to our business and to our people, and to see that, yes, it is a win because we can prove along the way that we are making steps in literacy and numeracy, but we also want to say it's a win because we're making steps in productivity and we're making steps in employee engagement and we're making steps for individuals. So that would be a big driver for us, because if we're going to put all the effort in to tick all the boxes, they need to be meaningful to us as an employer and as a business, as well as to you as a funder. So that's important to us. The other thing that we would be really interested in is having the funders coming to talk to the people in our business that have literacy and numeracy issues. It is very high level, and I know that it needs to be, but if we have an advisory group of people, even the very documents are, we can't present them to these people and say this is what the funders are looking to do for us. We'd like those people to be in partnership with us, coming and meeting our people, seeing where the needs are, seeing where the results can be, and what we can do together.
Perfect. Andre?
Pretty much those points. A couple others that I can just think of off the top of my head is businesses really like the idea of pilots, especially leadership at the highest level. I like the ideas of piloting programs. But it's about tailoring those pilot programs to what what areas of the business that you identify. And I think it's about working in partnership with the likes of TEC. There's always and I know working in the PTE sector, I know working in the tertiary sector, there's always this thinking that policymakers that reside on the terrace write policy without actually being, working with industry or working with providers. And so we'd like to see a strengthened relationships between those organisations or those government organisations and industry. I guess we come from a bit of a different tangent in still being a state-owned enterprise, that we have a responsibility to New Zealand to provide that ourselves. But over and above that, as a good responsible corporate citizen, I think we have that responsibility as well. But strengthening those partnerships with key agencies, getting them out, as the guys from Downer said, getting them out onto the floor to say, actually, this is what it's like on a day-to-day basis in our organisations. This is the reality of what it is, what it's like. Yes, we've got a diverse group of people that are working in our organisations. We've got people coming in from school that haven't achieved NCEA, and yet we're getting them to work on machines that are highly automated. We're wanting people to be more innovative. You can only drive innovation if you've got a skilled and capable workforce that can start thinking about, how do I problem solve, how do I communicate with my team leader, how do I understand what these machines or computers are telling me. So we've got to build our internal capability, and literacy and numeracy is a good start, but it's not the end of the process, it's only the beginning.
Golden words, golden words. That's about building partnerships, understanding the realities of the business with which you're dealing. The needs of New Zealand Post won't be the same as Downer. They might look a bit the same, but they'll be different. All that stuff, really valuable words for those of you who are in the policy space. What I'm going to do, we've got a few minutes now to open up the floor for questions. What I'd like you to do when you stand up, please, is say who you are and where you're from. Then ask your question. Doesn't need to be any particular person, but it can be if you want to. I'm also happy to answer any questions that people might have. So, have we got a microphone out there, guys? Out in the world? No? We're using that one, okay. Gee, it's a budget meeting, there's only the one microphone. That's all good. Okay, who wants to start? There's a gentleman just there, thank you.
Phil, this question's for you. First of all, I hope you get re-elected or whatever, or reappointed or whatever, because you're doing a very good job in the business space. But my question is this. It seems to me as if there is a value proposition for industry and corporates right across the board to become more actively involved than they are, because it's low literacy numeracy is something that's holding back the productivity of the nation. And my question to you really is, what do you think it would take the world of business to become more actively involved than they are at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. Some of the guys might have a view on this too, and dealing with your own counterparts and suppliers and so on. My sense is that there's always going to be hero companies that just do it, and you could take that on almost any subject: diversity, childcare, literacy, numeracy, financial literacy, all sorts of stuff. You'll see companies who take that by the horns, and they say, we're going to do that, we're going to lead on that. So you've got two of them, there's just gangbuster stories you've just heard there, some fantastic, just golden stories about what they're doing and why they're doing it. There'll be companies who won't necessarily do it. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, they simply have other drivers that they've got on, but one of the biggest single things I've found when I talk to CEOs about this is they don't know how big a problem they've got. So when we say to them, are you aware, what's the number, Carrie, 100,000 something? It's a big number of New Zealanders who are functionally literate and enumerate, and whatever it's 50%, whatever the number is, I can't remember the number. It's a big number. It's a big, scary Poseidon Adventure sort of towering inferno number. The CEOs go, pardon me? Well, that's not in my business. And I say, no, it is in your business. You just don't know about it, because it's so big. It's going to be in every business. Every business is going to have this. So a lot of it is getting them the information so that they are capable of taking action. That's the first point. Second point, I think, is making sure that the right line managers, the people you're looking at here, have the right kind of capability to have those conversations up, because even if the CEO doesn't know about it, the line managers certainly will. The warehouse managers, the supervisors, they're going to know it. They just won't be empowered to talk up. So there's a piece about company knowledge and understanding, and the unbelievability of some of the numbers is striking. Second point, though, the reason I'm quite keen for you to understand the piece about the policymakers and the government action is if we can say to those companies who are thinking about it, look, TEC or whoever the funding agency might be, actually has some programs here, and there's some people out there going to come and talk to you. Dave from the TEC is going to come and talk to you, and we're going to see what we can do for you. My sense is that will open up, or a provider, you know, whatever it might be, that will open up the possibility, because the other key thing about companies that aren't doing this is they won't know how. They'll think it's quite a big deal, and they're worried about it. They're worried about embarrassing employees who can't read and write. They're worried about all of that stuff. They're worried about corporate sustainability risk, all sorts of stuff. So if you can demystify it for them, then that will help a lot. And the kind of leadership of these companies will be important. If we can show them some more, if we can get them at a more of a collective leadership role, certainly at CEO level, I think we can then move it out. But there's some ideas for you. But when I've discussed it, a lot of it is about lack of knowledge about the problem right there. That's useful. We still got the microphone out in the audience. Who wants to go next? Ma'am.
Hi, Di Boss from Service IQ. Intuit. I just wondered from all of you what you would say to policymakers if they were to come and talk to you about literacy and numeracy in the workplace. What changes would you like them to make for you?
To be quite honest, at the moment, no changes at all. I think what's happening is fantastic, and I hope that our company gets another opportunity to do exactly what they're doing now. I have expressed, however, to our learning and development team, so Andre and Caroline, is what next after this. So the pilot is due to finish around about September, and I just know that now that they've started their journey, the staff members who are on this pilot will be looking to further themselves, so maybe there's an opportunity for them to continue with that.
Cool.
I've just got maybe one thing to say, and that's if people are coming to the businesses, that would be great. So whatever you say when you come to us would be good, but probably selling the problem is part of it, but I think selling solutions for businesses is a really big part of it as well. So what can a good literacy and numeracy program do to the bottom line for your business is a really good place for a policymaker to come and talk to us about. And I know that's not normally what they do, but if you want really good buy-in, and policymakers will generally be talking to managers at that top level, that's the sort of language to be using. More than we have more than statistics about potentially this is the problem and this is the literacy levels and these are the New Zealand literacy levels and this is the problem. If you can say through this policy or through this funding or through this initiative, this can affect your bottom line by this much, and this can increase employee engagement. If that coming from outside of an organisation would be really powerful.
Yeah, that's a really helpful insight. The idea of saying when government officials design programs, and I speak to more of them than almost any other private sector person in the country. I love what they do. I mean, this is not a criticism at all. The point is, though, that they start from the perspective of what government needs and what government wants. So they don't necessarily start from the perspective of what business needs or business wants. So it sounds like you've got some great case studies here to go and look and see, you know, how did if any, how did government engagement here help these guys go faster or start? That sounds like an interesting thought. Let me give you another one that's not dissimilar to this. When MSD doesn't have this view now, which is fantastic, but a number of years ago, when I was talking to them about disability employment, you know, getting people off the sickness benefit who were disabled into work, their definition of success was getting those people off a benefit. I said, well, that's not business definition of success. Business definition of success is I found a good employee. Get the idea? So that neither side was trying not to do the right thing. It was just a different reference point. So I think as much as possible trying to marry up those reference points to say, what is it that you need and what is it that business needs, and how can we kind of marry that up so the language is the same and the intervention logic is the same. That's going to go gangbusters, and I'm really pleased to say that MSD would not say these days that getting a person with a disability off the sickness benefit is their solution. They say keeping them sticky in a job is their solution. That's exactly right. That's what businesses do. So that we can get there. We can get these common definitions of success. Who else wants to ask a question? We've got time for a few more. Right down the back. Our microphone monitor is going to get fit.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, sorry.
I'm Bev Cassidy McKenzie. I'm from the Equal Employment Opportunities Trust.
Right.
I guess my questions are to both of you. Two things. The businesses, so we work with businesses as well, and a couple of things that we've seen are when providers bring an integrated solution to a business. Absolutely, literacy is an issue, to up to 1 million New Zealanders, in fact, and one of the things that we find that businesses tell us is that obviously they're not all Māori, they're not all young people, some of them are our ageing workforce. We've got the second highest in the world. We have a lot of migrants in New Zealand, so we need an integrated solution coming into businesses. So I guess from your perspective, from both your organisations, what sorts of integrated solutions have you seen come to your business? And I know, Phil, you touched on solutions, because I think that's absolutely the right term. What sorts of integrated solutions have you guys seen that have touched on all of these things? Because I think that's the key. It's a combination of what diversity is seen as. Literacy is one of them. It's absolutely the key one. It's a strong determinant of what a solution is. But what solution have you seen in terms of that?
They can be thinking about that as a microphone comes down. Certainly one, just to start that thought, one of the integration terms that I think, one of the ways to think about integration is to think about the word respect. So you're respected no matter what, and you are given the right kind of package of opportunities and investments that work for you. So you're not differently respected, you are simply respected. Your choices and your history is respected in the way in which policy works and the way in which the company intervenes. But just having given those sort of introductory comments, anybody might want to make a comment about that.
I think you're exactly right. There's so many different individuals and they have their own needs. I think something that's worked well for us is that we've done very individualised programs. I know that's not always a great solution in a big company, and like I say, we have 5,000 people in our company, but the pilot program that we did meant that we created learning champions right across the company.
Yep.
And then those learning champions had very small groups of people that they worked with depending on needs, so they were actually given an individual focus for each of those people, and that's why we had such great individual outcomes that went down to somebody reading a book to their son, or somebody managing to get their driver licence that never had because they couldn't read it well enough. I'm not sure about New Zealand Post. We haven't had a lot of experience with across-the-board big programs that haven't actually been totally targeted to the individual. So,
Yeah, you're exactly right. One of the things that we're keen to look at is tailored programs for different parts of our organisation or our businesses. One of the key projects that I'm working on at the moment is in our operations. In our mail centres is taking our standard operating procedures that, and most organisations would know, your SOPs are usually big thick manuals that sort of sit either beside the machine or in your team leader's office and gather dust most of the time, and usually it's only the technician that can understand the jargon in it. So how do we take those operating procedures and turn them into guides that our people can use, whether they're operating a machine or processing mail? It's about context for us, and it's about tailoring the solution to meet the needs of not only the organisation but also our people. We're really keen to look at, I said before, talking about innovation, about identifying talent within our organisation, fostering that talent, developing effective teams. And effective teams for us is about understanding your role in the organisation or your role within the supply chain, how that can add to a customer, a really good customer service or customer focused experience. And so it's about understanding that. Just to go back to the other question about what's going really well, I think in the literacy and numeracy space, the assessment tool has been a real eye-opener for us as an organisation. we're able to understand where our people are within the organisation and within their own understanding or literacy and numeracy space. The target review of qualifications has made it easier for our organisation to understand what qualifications are out there and what qualifications to align to our business across the group. So not just for our team leaders in business or management, but for our posties that have just done a great program. It was the level 1 employment skills program, but even at that level, the value add stuff that they were getting just was huge. So the TROC review has been really good. We're able to understand the pathways for people that are going to go on to nationally recognised qualifications. And as Nelson was saying, that's what the feedback we're getting, and that's some of the stuff we're seeing from this first draft report, is that our people are wanting more. They're really inspired by the learning that they've got from our providers of our literacy and numeracy. Some stuff we'll keep in-house, but literacy and numeracy is such an expertise topic, if that's a word. It's such a specialised topic that you guys are the experts, so it makes sense for us to work with you rather than to bring that in house. That seems to work really well.
Cool. There's an urgent question from a lady down here, which we'll do very quickly if we can, and we'll get some quick answers, and that'll be the last question.
I'm Pushpa Wood from Westpac Mass Infinite Centre. Just quick question. You guys have been in this field for a long time. And I'm just interested to know when is the point when you stop talking about pilots and making it as a business as usual? Do you have some criteria in mind, or is it because pilots can only last so long? And I've been hearing about pilots for the last 10 years plus.
Good point.
That is a good point. Downer has moved past pilots, so it's business as usual for us. But as you say, we have been doing it. We started our first, pilot program together with TEC in 2010, so that was 5 years ago, so we should be well past pilots. So there's business as usual in many ways, but there will always be new initiatives that we want to try, and those will be pilots, because anything new, we want to try it in a small part of our organisation. But I absolutely agree with you, and I think one of the big keys around that is with it being business as usual, there's no shame in it anymore. That's something that's taken the organisation, a number of years, is that people are quite happy to talk about having low literacy and numeracy. We've done a number of assessments across the country, and it's no issue for people to say, I'm not very good at reading, or I'm not very good at maths, and so I'm doing this. When they do go on programs or they're helped out, it's not something that they're hidden away or they're embarrassed to tell their peers about. And that's, for us, that's a measure of how we know it's gone past a pilot.
Good point. Great point. Anything to add?
I sound like I'm talking too much. Yeah, keep it short. Okay. Thanks, Nelson. New Zealand Post is 170 years old. We've been piloting for a long time. We're only now coming to from the 1st of July, the biggest change in that 170 years, changing to an alternate day delivery. No other organisation, no other postal service around the world has had to do that. So we're sort of trailblazing in that respect. And in the literacy and numeracy space, that's why change has brought about these pilots. We know we have to change. We can't rest on our laurels. We've got to move with industry. We've got to move with this shift to knowledge industries. When it will become business as usual is when we start living our values. We need to build an organisational culture that's driven from the top, and we've got a really good leader in Brian, and I don't say that just because I work for him, but he's got a vision about what New Zealand Post can achieve. There's still opportunities to grow in the market that we're in. It is competitive, but within that we need a highly skilled labour force, and as I said, literacy and numeracy is at the heart of that for us.
All right. Well, I'll stop the questions here. We're going to go down to have a couple of beers in a minute. Nelson, I don't know how you missed that, mate. I really am not. Anyway, that's have to sort that out later, mate. I said to you at the start, these are hero companies of mine because they just do such wonderful stuff and for the right reasons inside their companies around literacy and numeracy. I think you've just heard why I think they're hero companies. You've just heard golden stories from these people and wonderful insights into what drives them that I hope will help you in your work of connecting with companies like this and in inspiring others to do great work in this area. So can I ask you to please thank Nelson and Fred and Debbie and Andre.